Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on which part of the country that you might be hailing from today. And welcome to this very special and timely edition of Arcview Access. Today, we are talking about money, one of my favorite topics. But in this case, we're going to be discussing how our industry struggles without the benefits of basic financial services that literally run our entire global economy. If anything, this last week gave me hope that we are on a path to change, if not rapid change. And I'd like to give a quick shout out to our newest members of the Cannabis Club: Arizona, New Jersey, South Dakota, Montana, and Mississippi. Welcome to the family. So now what? We have a majority of states here in this United States that are allowing some form of legal cannabis, but we're still literally back in the 1920s when we used to bring in like bags of grain to pay our mortgages and our taxes. So this panel is here to not just talk about the challenges, but how we're rallying together to enact the necessary change. And actually, let's be honest, these aren't really challenges, it's simply basic rights that we are requesting that every other legal business in the world has access to: banking, insurance, investment, and payment solutions. So some housekeeping real quick before I bring on Jake and Chris from Spence, who is our sponsor today. We have a lot to talk about. So we're going to be setting aside 75 minutes this morning or early afternoon. And at the end of this, we're going to have about 10 minutes of Q&A. So make sure you load up your questions below so that we can get to them. There's also going to be a survey at the end, which you know is very important for us. We want to hear from you. We want to hear how you're liking these shows and other things that we can offer. And then we also, by the way, for you attendees, have some really cool stuff that we're giving away. So stay tuned. Jake and Chris, welcome.
All righty. Thanks, Kim. And well, good morning, everyone. I hope you have a fresh pot of coffee ready, because this has got to be one of the most engaging webinars we've ever produced, relevant to everybody in this space. And kicking us off, I am thrilled to be here with our sponsor and expert panelist today, Chris Rentner, co-founder of Chicago's Spence Labs and their product Spence, a new cashless payment solution for the cannabis industry. Chris, thank you for joining us today. I know our audience...
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes.
This will be fun. I know our audience would love to hear this, though, in your own words, but please give us the full rundown on Spence and the financial services you provide for the cannabis industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Spence itself was born out of a incubated solution from actually a bank headquartered in Chicago, Burling Bank. And what the way we came about this was to offer a bunch of different financial services. As Kim mentioned at the very beginning, unfortunately, the industry is lacking a lot of that. And so we needed to take a methodical approach to providing solutions to the marketplace. Our bank partner, Burling Bank in Chicago, already supplies depository services, lending services to the cannabis industry, and has for a handful of years, and does on a broader scale than just Chicago and Illinois. And then Spence was the next iteration of that, where we now supply ACH types of capabilities, credit types of capabilities to a consumer, and payments between the consumer and the dispensary. And we have some new exciting things coming out, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later as well, that we are kind of round out the whole concept in trying to be the PayPal, if you will, for the cannabis industry, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And happy to hear there's going to be a little bit of a reveal. Sounds like there's some interesting new products and stuff coming down the pipeline. So tell us, how did the idea for Spence originate? And, who are some of the key partners that help make this, a leading solution? Sounds like the banks are feeling pretty good about this.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of banks that are not comfortable with this industry, which is fine. There are a lot of banks that are not comfortable with gambling. There are a lot of banks that are not comfortable with a number of other industries. To me, that just means there's opportunity for the ones that do jump into the space. And so the idea was born out of the bank itself. My background, I've been in technology for about a decade, fintech in technology more specifically for the last 7 years or so. And I was working with a number of different banks, Burling Bank being one of them. And because they were banking the cannabis industry, we saw a lot of inefficiencies, even for dispensaries that were already banked. As a cannabis business. And, this is not uncommon for this industry, but I remember seeing duffel bags filled with a lot of cash, just kind of floating around, not in an unsecure way. I don't want to kind of push that out there, but just seeing duffel bags filled with cash was something that just was baffling to me about 15, 18 months ago. And so we said that we needed to find a better way. And so Burling Bank, in partnership with myself from a fintech perspective, decided to invest heavily in Spence, which did not even have a Spence name as of 8 months ago, and start rolling that out to their own customers first. And then once that was going really well, we spun the product out of the bank as a privately held fintech company. I then became the CEO of that company. And now we are in the market working with a whole bunch of different dispensaries from coast to coast and in the Midwest as well. So we're really excited about it.
Excellent. And I'm picturing you sitting there just like that push it to the limit montage from Scarface. Everyone just coming in with it. It's a trip to think about where this industry is headed now that we're finally getting past this. Walk us through who a target client would be and what degree of traction is ideal. And very eager to hear kind of what regions you specialize in, and let us know if you have existing clients to speak to.
Yeah. So, for me, I don't have any sort of size of dispensary or medical or recreational type of restrictions. I don't have restrictions in any state that we operate in today. And that was a huge part of the process and kind of our differentiation in the market. When we built this solution internally at the bank, we engaged with regulators overtly along the way. And so that has allowed us to work with some of the largest dispensary groups in the country. We've announced publicly our partnership with PharmaCann at all of their VeriLife dispensaries across their footprint. But we're also happy to work with, the one-off, two-off locations that are just getting started. We have a social equity program that we work with up and coming dispensary owners as they launch their businesses. Illinois, unfortunately has had a little hurdle to get over with that announcement, but we are very excited and developing that social equity program more and more as we kind of reach out and gain more traction in the market. And so, I think we covered regions there. We're pretty agnostic. Size, we're really kind of all over the place. We're happy to work with really small ones or the large multi-state operators. We're doing both of those things today.
Huge. Well, what's wrong with the current financial services industry, and have you built a better mousetrap?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the problems are pretty clear. We're dealing with, whether we want it to be or not, a product that is on, the Controlled Substances Act, or Controlled Substances rules. We're dealing with a product that, is federally illegal. And so that makes for a lot of difficult situations. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And after the Cole memo being revoked, that caused a number of issues for financial institutions. And so, what we did was we were again very methodical in how we were approaching this. Burling Bank has been very methodical. They only started with deposits back in the middle 2000 teens, and they've slowly brought on other services along the way. That's the same approach that we're taking here. And so that better mousetrap is just being overtly transparent with our bank, being overtly transparent with the regulators, being overtly transparent with our dispensaries and the consumers about what we're offering to them and how we're doing it. This isn't smoke and mirrors. This isn't, credit card processing overseas. This is long-standing financial services that just might not have been made available to the industry previously. And we're opening the door to those things coming to the market.
Transparent banks? Wow, surprising.
Yeah.
Well, what's next for Spence, and walk me through how the Arcview community can assist with these goals.
Yeah, so we have a number of exciting things. I mean, as I said, we're positioning ourselves to eventually be the PayPal for cannabis. And I say that because there are a number of unique things that the cannabis industry requires for financial services. At the end of the day, legalization or not, financial services will remain difficult, as they are in other perceived high-risk industries. And so whether legalization takes place or not, it's not like every bank is going to be banking a cannabis-related business in some way. And so our plan is to continue to roll out new services every couple of quarters, whether that's for the consumer or whether that's for the dispensary, and really be that specialized, vertically integrated bank to fintech solution for the cannabis industry. And that might mean alternative consumer credit options so that you no longer have to buy with just the cash that you have in your hand. Cashless payment solutions. Obviously, the pandemic has shown that is something that's absolutely necessary out of the industry. And we've seen a lot of people starting to adopt it in the industry. And then that very, very deep partnership that we have with Burling Bank, I think, drives a very unique opportunity nationwide on what we can deliver to the market.
Excellent. And tell me about any associations you're a part of, anything that's benefiting, fintech and cannabis.
Yeah, so we're supporting or involved in a bunch of different organizations. Obviously, very exciting to be with you guys here and talking about this type of stuff with your group and your experience in the industry. We're part of a number of other trade groups that are involved in the betterment of the industry and financial services in the industry. So we want to be very supportive about the industry as a whole and how we can make it more efficient. It's not very efficient today, right, wrong, or otherwise, whether we believe in it or not, whether it's I know we just had the election. So whether it's a Republican issue or a Democratic issue, we just want to make more financial services available. And until, descheduling and federal legalization, we're not likely going to see the national banks. We're not likely going to see the PayPals. We're not going to see the big card networks in this industry. And so that gives us a really big opportunity to deliver financial services in a more unique way.
Huge. And to close out, what is the best way to get in touch with you and recap any offers you're running for Arcview's network?
Yeah, so the easiest way, go to our website, gospence.com. We have a bunch of information there, whether you're a dispensary, whether you're a cultivator, whether you're a consumer, any of those areas. We're happy to continue to have that conversation in a number of different channels. We have a team standing by, so there's a phone number, there's an email address, support@spencelabs.com. So you can get in touch with us in any way. My email, feel free. It's chris@gospence.com. So I'm the founder and CEO of the company, and we're happy to work with kind of anyone. And I did see a number of questions coming in along the way. Jake, I think we're going to have some Q&A along the way. So I see your questions about, how does the system work? How does the flow come together? We're happy to provide you with some demos, marketing materials. And Jake, if we have time today as well, I'd be happy to talk more about that if that's available.
So we're going to break into the panel, and you're going to have plenty of time at the end to address.
Fantastic.
And for everybody, that's gospence.com. And please, I implore you, reach out to Chris this week, next week. He's going to have a baby in like a week or two. So let's just make sure that he's just slammed. Well, congrats, obviously, on the the impending birth of you believe your daughter. And then now back to Kim. Thanks, Chris.
Wow, great. Congratulations. That's terrific. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Chris. And what's really great to hear is that there are solutions, not just problems. And so speaking of solutions, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today, who is really stepping in and taking a stance to change our cash-reliant industry. Kirsten Trusco is the CEO and co-founder of the Emerging Markets Coalition. It's a not-for-profit, membership-driven organization, and they're focused solely on normalizing financial services for underserved markets, and they're currently focused on cannabis. So before EMC, Kirsten spent a career in fintech and cutting-edge financial services, and she's led successful initiatives to normalize financial services for marginalized and or underserved markets, helping to drive their speed of profitability and growth. And so I encourage everyone on here today to become a member of EMC so that we can work in unison to bring these essential services to our essential industry. And as Helen Keller said, alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. Or if you're more like me and your spirit animal is more like Richard Branson, then screw it, let's do it. So Kirsten, come on and let's get this show started.
Thank you, Kim. That was wonderful. I love your spirit animals there. So thank you to you and the entire Arcview team, incredible group of folks behind the scenes. So thank you for that. And EMC is Emerging Markets Coalition, emcoalition.org if you want to look it up. We're delighted to be partnering with Arcview and bringing to you this incredibly impactful research. We have seen in cannabis financial services, there is a flood of information in a desert of facts. So what we're really working hard to do is to bring together the cannabis industry and the financial services industry and bring in the facts, which helps to influence government, media, all kinds of folks impactful to our lives, really. We're delighted to have some of the top experts in this space on our panel today, truly rock stars in this field. Please do take a few minutes to look up their full bios in LinkedIn or on Arcview. Very, very impressive. We're going to ask each panelist to do a brief introduction of themselves, and then we'll get on to our topic and our discussion. Cody, you want to start?
It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Thanks for having me. And my name is Cody Sanchez. I'm a partner at Entourage Effect Capital. We're one of the cannabis growth equity firms in the industry. Been around since 2014, so I think we're one of the elder statesmen here in this industry, which is a bit funny to say. And we've invested about 66 companies, about $200 million under management. And the part that I find fascinating about this industry is we've been able to mature right alongside it. So we were early stage, back doing what Arcview was doing in the beginning, investing in seed stage companies, which is the opportunity here today. And then, now where we stand in this moment is doing deals that are more like $10 to $20 million in revenue is where we look now. Those companies just didn't exist in 2014. So it's a real pleasure getting to help this industry evolve from a finance perspective and getting to fund with the lifeblood that is capital some of the companies that are taking this industry by storm.
Excellent. Thank you. Chris, you said a bit before. Anything else you want to add by way of introduction?
No, I'm great. I think, everyone knows who I am after that conversation. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, Ashley, introduce yourself.
It's great to be here. I am Ashley Manning, and I'm a strategic advisor with the National Association of Cannabis Businesses. And we are a fully vetted organization within the cannabis space, working to establish that trust within within cannabis, but also trying to bridge that gap between various groups, whether it be banking, medical. Currently represent close to about 700 members and rapidly growing. And I have been in the space for about 5 years and bring experience from different parts of the supply chain, and very excited to be here today and bring my insights of what I'm seeing from a very grassroots level of what's going on in the industry and what the industry wants to see in terms of banking. So thank you guys for having me.
Ashley, thank you. And it's been a delight working with Ashley and NACB on bringing cannabis and financial services to focus to normalize financial services. Any industry that had the kind of challenges in banking would be challenged in just everyday business. So thank you for all that work. We're very excited. Today is EMC's release of the newest study from one of the top global researchers in the financial services and fintech industry. It's by ITE Group. If you want to look them up, it's spelled AITE, ITE Group. EMC commissioned their research to help capture the opportunities and risks to fintechs and banks and payment companies in the cannabis market. Please take a look through. We've got some of the top players in the market and experts, and we're very thankful for the support on this. As a preview to the report, one of ITE's forecasts is a 26% compounded annual growth rate for payments in the U.S. cannabis market. We're all excited as this makes cannabis one of the largest greenfield opportunities in banking and payments and fintech in decades. But many companies are hesitant to act given the specific challenges in this market, especially as bankers and federal payments. Not the least of those challenges is it being a Schedule I substance. So especially with what happened with the election and the new legalizations, we've got a lot of new financial services entities that are super interested in the market. And we'd love to have more of these discussions on how do we work together to normalize. If you'd like a summary of the report, please contact us at EMC. Just go to emcoalition.org and scroll down. So now we get to the discussion. We are doing this as a talk show style. Everybody's got a few questions, and then they're all going to weigh in if they want to comment on what others have said. And Cody, we're going to start with you. What current needs and alternatives does the industry need to consider for cash?
Well, a couple things. One, we won't invest in a company unless it's banked. So, where the industry is at now, if I'm talking to you entrepreneurs out there and you're in the cannabis land and your initial response is, yeah, we'd love to get investment, but we're not banked. I'm sorry, that's not a good answer. The answer needs to be that you got to figure it out. There's over 700 institutions that will bank cannabis companies. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a grind, but so is entrepreneurship. So I definitely would just take the first step. Credit unions, small regional banks, small state-specific banks is the first sort of step. Then, I'm going to leave some of the actual, operational back-end systems to people like, Chris, who run varying programs. But what I will say is, if you are trying to be a financial firm in cannabis to provide a banking solution for cannabis companies in the interim, I think that's great. I think there's a great opportunity there in the short term. If you're thinking of that as a venture style company in which you want to get somebody like me to invest in you, that's probably not going to happen. Most investors see those types of businesses as Band-Aid solutions. So they're great for cannabis companies to utilize, tougher for venture capital companies to invest in, because we need to get 3 to 5x and we need a longer time horizon for that to happen, 5 to 7 years. And in that period, legalization may happen.
Excellent. So we had a couple of other questions, but I think you just answered some of those. One was, is banking and finance related issues keeping investors away from cannabis? So you just told us that. What are investors' views and interest in some of the fast growing fintechs serving the cannabis industry? And I'll caveat that just a bit. The solutions that we'd be talking about are not ones that are going to sunset when it's descheduled, legalized, what have you. These are long-term money solutions for this industry.
Well, in that case, how I would think about it is since this industry doesn't have an operational infrastructure and finance that is entrenched, whenever you don't have that, it's much easier to change and grow, right? It's the same way when you go to China and you look at the infrastructure from a trains perspective, let's say, or from a highway perspective, like, wow, China's infrastructure is worlds away better than the US in, let's say, Shanghai or Hong Kong. Why is it? Because they don't have to tear down their existing infrastructure in order to build. They get to use the newest technology. And so the same is true in cannabis. I think the real opportunity here is can we integrate smart, non-scammy, in my opinion, non-ICO related blockchain behind some of the cannabis industry's financial technology in order to sort of stair step ahead of other industries that have entrenched tech and thus are worried about things like disrupting it with items from blockchain. So that part I think would be interesting. And then there's also a lot of integration with cannabis specific tech companies like, MJ Freeway, Headset, BDS, that we need much better tech integration happening between the platforms that exist now that will continue to exist because they're very specialized after legalization happens, and they might get picked up, and sure, they might have strategic non-cannabis competition, but those would be the couple of plays that I think would be really interesting. And then maybe the last thing is we've looked at a ton of these deals. I haven't seen one I love entirely at the right valuation yet, but coupon specific, how can we gamify the cannabis industry from a purchasing perspective? Because we still have such a unique interaction with sales, since we can't buy online in the typical sense and have it work through broad-based distribution like Amazon or the mail or whatever the case may be. So there are ways to take tech and gamify our user experience.
That is fabulous. And having a lot of friends who are in the fintech industry, they are going to love what you just said. So that's fabulous. So Ashley, if you look at what 700 cannabis members to NACB, if you can speak from the cannabis business side, what are those businesses saying is missing from the current banking and payments options?
That's a great question. And first answer that I have is branded card services like Visa and MasterCard. Very, very basic, essential services that any other essential business has. And there are the contactless payments available as a solution. However, that's not really ideal to the customer going in. Grandma who's 80, she doesn't understand, put this on this card and use that. It's just not ideal for the consumer. And retail businesses are reporting that back, that they just, cash. They can't use credit cards, so they're missing out on a large opportunity of business. And second, just banks welcoming the cash. As it stands today, and to the best of my knowledge, there are FinCEN guidelines of how banks can accept cash. But again, the banks have the right to choose whose cash they do accept and who they don't. And like you said, Cody, there are 700 banks that do take it. You just have to be persistent and patient as well. You have to do a lot of work. So those are the two main things, welcoming of our cash and branded card services.
Okay. Well, and let me say a quick thing on FinCEN, because for those of us who spent way too much time with FinCEN and the banking regulators, the report that they put out, and they update it regularly, right? But it reported 700, whatever it is. What they're reporting is how many banks filed SARS reports, so suspicious activity reports. When you go in and you dig through and look at those banks, there's maybe between 100 and 150 that are actively or proactively banking cannabis. So we go to the Hill and talk to the congressional folks and they say, oh, well, it's over 700 banks, you should be fine. So, well, A, it's a big industry, so no, that's not enough. But B, take a look at that. Just because you filed a SARS report doesn't mean you're actively banking. It means you think you found something suspicious. So that's where I know we were really excited to see what happened in the election with more states coming online so we can broaden that base, and came up a little earlier about regional banks, community banks. They are the backbone of our communities, and they are the ones that are generally the most likely to try something that will serve the community from a safety perspective. And so we're super excited about what happened in the election. So Ashley, in sharing views from your membership, you've shared before that there's a lack of trust between the cannabis industry and financial services industry. Why and how do we fix that?
The lack of trust, it comes on both sides, not just the cannabis industry side. And speaking on cannabis related businesses, what our members are reporting is that it's taking up to 10 months for them to get approved for any kind of banking. And when they are approved, they're sometimes shut down roughly about 45 to 90 days later for the second or third time. So members are asking us, where do we go? What do we do? And up until meeting you, Kirsten, and EMC, we really didn't have any type of solution available to our members besides ones that they have already tried. So thank you, Kirsten, for all the hard work you're doing, because now we have somewhere to help direct them with the appropriate people and expertise to talk about banking and share that. But I do think that fixing this issue is, again, going to take time. But what I think everybody needs to realize is legalization might come a lot faster than we anticipate. So we need to start bridging that gap as soon as possible. And it can start, if banks don't trust the industry, they can start with trusted organizations. The NACB has done some of the due diligence for banks to help reduce some of their risks. It's not guaranteed, but they can feel comfortable to at least start talking with our members and some of our brands that we work with. But fraud is running rampant. In 2019, we denied 15% of our applicants due to fraud. So I can only imagine what banks are saying, because we're just seeing a small portion of applicants doing that. So again, it's just going to take time. It really is, and being patient.
Well, it's interesting you said that. From a background in fintech, it always encompasses cybersecurity and fraud and anti-money laundering. And a couple of friends that run cannabis businesses or do compliance for cannabis businesses started calling November, December last year and telling these stories of the fraudsters and what they were very specifically perpetrating in the dispensaries and with the cash. And they told the story. I said, we've got to get that out. Like the best way to not be a victim is to be a hard target, right? To educate the owners and the people working there. And they said, oh, no, it's only happened a couple times. Don't worry about it. Well, they called last week and had 5 more examples. So one of the things we're talking about, as you talk about trust and communication, is creating something called Think Like a Bad Guy. And maybe having fintech, financial services, banks help to share what we've seen as having been targets for years of these increasingly more sophisticated fraudsters. And maybe that would be help to build that bridge of trust.
It's in some of the fraud that the NACB specifically is seeing. I don't necessarily think it is intentional fraud too. I think it's just lack of business acumen. These entrepreneurs, they've never banked in their life. They've never filed taxes. And I really think a lot of education needs to happen with them on the compliance side of things. But I sometimes really don't think it's intentional fraud. And that's where the growth needs to come in from the industry. And that's where the lack of trust comes in from the banks. So it's very understandable and very fair.
So maybe that's something to work together on, is some of those education pieces with the bankers saying, hey, here's what we'd like to see. And the cannabis industry saying, well, here's what we have. Like,
absolutely,
finding a way to meet in the middle.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. So, Chris, how can banking and payments affect the profitability of a cannabis business?
If you look at kind of industry standards, there hasn't been a research paper that I have seen in cannabis, but if you look at outside of cannabis, typically cash will cost you from a business perspective anywhere between about 7 to 9% of your top line revenue. So if you're operating in a cash basis, and whether that's the cannabis industry that has a very large swing into the cash direction of payments, or if you just look at a random retail or restaurant, it's typically 7 to 9% in terms of a cost basis when you're using cash, because it's inefficient. It's probably one of the easiest way to have fraud in the system. You have to deal with couriers, you have to deal with drop-offs. There are just so many issues that come with cash. And so when I think of cash, not to mention the whole pandemic that we are in the middle of still today. So now it's not just costing you 7 to 9% of your revenue. It's also now It's not that it wasn't dirty before. It's just now been everyone has been made aware of how dirty money is. And so you combine all those things together and you're talking, again, 7, 9, 10% of your business revenue is going towards managing the cash. If you look at solutions such as ours in the market, we're multiples lower than that, not just 1% or 2%. We're anywhere between 50 and as low as 20% of the cost comparatively. And we remove a lot of the fraud. As a fintech company, we can help you remove some of that fraud by tracking it, by implementing systems to understand who the consumer is, making sure the money is flowing into the right institution that is necessary, getting rid of couriers, safes, security companies to move all of that cash for you. So what is the impact? I mean, we could be talking as much as 5 to 7% increase in profitability by kind of getting out of cash, at least from my perspective.
Hey, Cody, do you have a view on kind of how, when you're looking at a company, a cannabis related business, and you said if you're not banked, go get a bank and come back. But how do you look even more so in their ability to track fraud or things that are related to dealing in cash, or like Chris said, just the profitability around electronic payments versus cash?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't say that, I don't want to say that to be harsh, but I have built a bunch of businesses, and so have all my partners. And what I hate the most is when people don't give you the tough feedback that is truth. And so as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of people that'll say, oh, yeah, we're for the entrepreneur and we do everything for you. And, we're here to help you grow. And then they're like, oh yeah, but we only do 1 deal a year. And, we've only invested in 3 companies. It's like, come on, guys. So, just giving you a little bit of the truth, whether that's tough love or not. I wanted to know it when I ran businesses, good, bad, or otherwise. From my perspective, the most important part as a fund manager to due diligence is your SOPs. So, we're obviously not in your business. We have some companies that we take and have a controlling stake and ownership in them, but a lot of them, we're not in your day to day. And if we're doing our job right in due diligence and underwriting, that continues. And so I can't be there to see how do you handle all of your fraudulent situations. What I can do is, and what we do up front, is make sure that you have SOPs and a playbook that's extremely well documented, that is laid out so we can see how you strategically think through issues. And most investors are going to want to see this. Why did you choose this bank? How does your compliance consultant work? What does your playbook look like for when you have to take cash? How do you choose your providers that, if you are able to take debit cards in some way, shape, or form, is your system that you utilize, is it actually compliant? How do you due diligence your providers? So all of those things we would want to see in your standard operating procedures. And then, the industry is a small one. So when we've been investing since 2014, we're going to know not all of yours, but we're going to know a lot of the people who, are manufacturers for you, who are product providers for you. So we're gonna ask them, do you pay your bills on time? What kind of terms do you allow for people? Do you go out and chase the money that you don't get? How do you do that? We're gonna use you as a consumer. So we're gonna come to if you're a retailer, we're gonna come to your location and actually try to go through the process and ask a lot of questions while we do it. We might even try a few different ways and see if you let us get away with things. And if you do, that would be a red flag. So, all of those things would be part of our process. And it's really to try to figure out 2 things. You're going to have mistakes. There's going to be issues. There's going to be fraud in some way, shape, or form. But do you do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen? And the only way we can tell that is, how do you think? How do you plan? And how do your strategic processes work? And then number 2, what are your ethics and morals? Are you willing to shave the line? Are you willing to take shortcuts? And we can see that pretty quickly when we engage in this way. Did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. So, Chris, I'm going to go back to you. You've mentioned not just cannabis industry, but broadly multiple different industries, and how having an electronic payment tool, card, app, online, whatever you're going to call it, is helpful. So, Chris, if you can share with us from a universal retail view, how much more do consumers generally spend with a retailer when they're using a credit card versus cash, check?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty common information out there. You typically see about a 16 to 18% lift when a consumer is purchasing using a credit card. I think what's interesting about the cannabis industry today, because the Visas, the MasterCards are not available, the question is, Cody kind of alluded to this before. She talked about it from maybe a blockchain perspective. The question is how can the industry supply comparable solutions, but just in a new, innovative way? Because we don't have the national banks, the card networks, what are other things that we can do to provide similar financial services to the industry that aren't available because of it? I think one of the great examples that can be done there is if you look at a company called Affirm or Klarna. These companies, in a competitive retail and e-commerce environment with Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, so on and so forth, over the last 6 to 8 years have built what is now commonly known as POS financing, or buy now, pay later. And it is basically a non-card network, so a non-Visa, MasterCard consumer credit option that is being that was initially pioneered in e-commerce and now is being brought into retail. And the basic premise is it is a plasticless, dipless, contactless version of a consumer credit offering. And it is not managed by the card networks. It is managed using the back-end infrastructure to the financial ecosystem, like real-time payments or ACH. And so I think whoever can deliver some more innovative products like that Cody is talking about, that really don't have to differentiate between cannabis or non-cannabis, but focus on the benefits in cannabis, can be pretty successful. So that is where you'll see that lift that you get from credit cards typically today. You could see it in the cannabis industry as solutions like that are made available into the market.
And Chris, as you listen to the market, what are the cannabis businesses saying they're paying now for payment services?
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of different things. There were some processors in the market previously that were kind of trying to use credit card processing, and that was through offshore. Cody talked about it. You have to really think through getting access to a bank. Like, that's the first thing. And there are banks out there, that 700 number, I believe it's probably closer to about 70 to 100 that are, emphatically banking the cannabis industry. And so, I think what you need to do is you need to get away from the thinking that it's difficult and you just need to build it into your process. You need to have that standard operating procedures. You need to offer in your investment thesis, in your operating thesis, you need to plan for the cannabis side of banking. And so I think if we can, if we, Spence, and others in the market can truly show the transparency of what we're doing and show to the dispensaries and the banks and cultivators in the world, we can actually supply a lot of very valuable financial services into the market that can extend past legalization. And so that does not have to include some of the bad players that are in the market that have been offering non-transparent credit card services, workarounds for cashless ATMs that get shut down all the time and then hold your money in accounts elsewhere. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of cool things out there, but you also, as a cannabis related business, need to be very skeptical. Push these businesses in financial services hard, force them to show their compliance, force them to show their processes. And I think you can do that as a dispensary, as a cannabis related business today.
So I had one little comment there. It was so great. The only thing I was going to add is, if you're a cannabis company, don't think that there's always a benefit to going with banks that always bank cannabis companies. We've had a ton of success going with banks that for our portfolio companies that are not traditional cannabis bankers. So I totally agree with everything you're saying. I just wanted to add that little caveat, since we've all kind of mentioned there are all these banks that do it. You don't need to have one that always banks cannabis, but you do want to have a couple backups in case they think they can bank cannabis, and then that one banker gets sort of beaten down from somebody on high. So those are only my 2 cents.
And Cody, that's huge, especially with the election that just went on. As somebody who's worked with banks forever, if you can, and Chris, I'm going to ask you a question on this in a minute. When you've got a payment solution that you're considering, take a look at who the bank is behind it, depending on who it is. But if you can, take a look at their board, go look at their website and who's on the board, do a little research on their LinkedIn. At least in my experience, if you've got ultra conservative people on that board, you might have happen what Cody just said, where everything's great because the person running the cannabis business is cool, understands what they're doing. But if the board wasn't aware, or they were aware, but it was just a tiny part of the business, and now it's becoming a very large part of the business, then you get a spotlight on it and you could end up with some of those challenges. So it's not that hard to check out who the board is on a bank for that. So Chris, there's something in the chat, and I know we're not taking questions yet, but this is related to what you were saying. Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover are federal networks running on federal rails, and cannabis is a Schedule I substance, which is federally not legal. So Chris, can you comment on when you have colleagues who say that they found a solution that lets you run your card in the dispensary or online?
So, different people have different opinions here. So I want to be first to say that this is my opinion. And I would also say that I'm biased because Spence, from a beliefs perspective, believes that if you are utilizing a card that is branded by one of the major card networks, you as a merchant or you as a consumer that are running that card are violating some version of terms and conditions, merchant services rules, privacy, whatever may have you. There are a number of different things that you agree to either as a consumer or a merchant when you're using those cards. And my belief, our belief, is that you are violating some of those rules associated from those networks. And so from that perspective, if I take that approach, if that's our approach here, is that cards are off the table, then you need to find alternative methods to transact. The ACH rails, while being federal rails, are very well known to favor the use of processing for cannabis. The new RTP capabilities being made available on a national basis are in active use and have not seen shut down from that. But then kind of, again, Cody, I'm going to call you out here because you made a great point. We need to think differently. We need to come up with new options. Is blockchain right? I understand the thesis that could seem like a great opportunity. I think my concern with that is that asking banks to get comfortable with cannabis, to get comfortable with violating federal law or the Controlled Substances Act, whatever may have you, and then bring in blockchain or digital coin-based transactions, you're just like piling on to the complex nature of the industry, which makes it tough. And so we've been focused on trying to use legal systems to transact funds or build our own network ourselves instead of going the blockchain route today. Is that where we're going to stay for the long term? I don't know. Like I said, we want to be, our thesis is to be a vertically focused cannabis version of PayPal. PayPal's in blockchain and digital coin transactions today. So why can't we eventually be there as well? And why can't we build a specialized transaction ecosystem that is more focused on the cannabis industry? So when legalization does occur, we don't have to worry so much about getting booted out of the dispensary, because those credit cards are going to come in just like the CBD industry, where they offer credit cards at 5, 7, 8, 9% on merchant processing fees, which are no better than your cash costs today. And so I know I'm kind of getting a little bit away from it of what your question was, but I think we have to be smart about how we do this. My thesis, Spence's thesis, is that if you're processing a branded card, you are not doing that legitimately today. And so we are supplying what we believe to be legitimate services in the industry, and we're doing it transparently with our bank. We are engaging with the regulators, and we're bringing those services to the market.
Chris, thank you for that. And Cody, I don't know if you've got a reply, but I'm going to insert just a little clarification. We're going to translate here between fintech and cannabis. Branded cards are Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover. There are other closed loop cards out there, like Starbucks is a closed loop card, but you can't use it everywhere. RTP, real-time payments. It is an advance for banking. You all might not be all that impressed, but it was huge. And it took an initiative across the industry 3 years to be able to do that. So real-time payments. And then Cody, when you brought up blockchain, I was kind of thinking of it like an insurance company thinks of it. So blockchain being how you store contracts and information across parties that may have reason to not trust each other, or to document it forever. But crypto and digital coin are the money piece of it. So there's two different things, either or both can run. So I don't know, Cody, if you had a comment on Chris's talking about blockchain crypto.
Yeah, I think there's lots of, to your point, I'm talking about the infrastructure that could be used on the back end, as you are, as just another mechanism for creating ways for information to communicate amongst each other and for people to transact information. But to your point, Chris, which is well made, is if I knew that there was a solution right now to the cannabis finance issue and banking issue and cash issue, I would have made it and created that company. I think my point here is really just if you're looking for, these are different audiences. So one, you have a cannabis company right now. What can you actually legally do, and what exists, and how can you optimize within the framework that you already have? Group one. Group two, entrepreneur thinking about the cannabis landscape, interested in fintech and interested in trying to create solutions for the cannabis industry. Group three, group two. Group three would be those who are, outside of the space already looking in. How can I bring the products that I already have to apply them to the cannabis industry, and how can I cross-pollinate? So I think it depends on who the audience is. And I think we're all saying the same thing. It's just who's your audience. If you're already in the industry and you need solutions, then that's Chris's target audience, right? If you're an entrepreneur looking to create solutions, like I may be your target audience because you're trying to get funding at some point, and if you're these strategics outside of the industry trying to look in and you already do these payment solutions for other people, it's trying to figure out, does your business translate somehow inside of the industry? So I'm not sure I added any more color except to say I wanted to be careful about who I was speaking to.
Well, and you brought up a good topic too, Cody, when you talked about we're all saying the same thing. So a little story at Money 2020 last year, which is the largest financial services fintech event in the world. It's in Vegas. They also do Asia and Europe, and was at a table with some cannabis leadership, cannabis businesses, and financial services. And most of them didn't know each other. It's early morning, it's Vegas, maybe they're crabby, I don't know. And they're starting to talk, and it's clear there's some irritation there. And I'm listening, and had them pause for a minute and said, wait, what these words in banking mean compliance, transparency, forthrightness. These words in cannabis mean the same thing. So guys, you're saying the same thing. You're trying to do the same thing. Just stop being crabby for a minute and listen, and you'll see that we've got the same goals. And that was really part of the impetus with Emerging Markets Coalition is let's translate. You've got two parties that for many reasons maybe aren't listening, haven't trusted each other, bring government into that as well. And let's all be transparent. And we have nothing to hide. None of us do, right? But we need to speak in a way that the others understand, which is helpful. So I think we've got a few more minutes and then we go to Q&A. hot topic, right? Just had the election. We've talked a little bit about that. If you want to really geek out on that topic, EMC just did a webinar. It'll be on our website December 10th that really goes into the detail on that if you're interested in that. But this is for each of you. What do you think are the political ramifications of this election? And if you look at a Biden White House, we don't know yet for House and Senate how that's going to settle out, but just with what we've seen so far. And Cody, I can see you first. So do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Well, a couple points. One, I think the most impactful thing for the cannabis industry in the short term happened. 5 states legalized in some capacity. Every single state that had cannabis on the ballot moved for more access to the plant. So I think that's really big. Now, you know, I don't think either candidate is I'm pretty safe to say this, is pro cannabis at this point. Biden has mentioned decriminalization, but certainly never mentioned legalization. So I think at this point we are probably, and, you know, at this point, Republicans will still control the Senate. And so, you know, and there's some stipulation on, can a president, regardless of who it is, unilaterally allow for federal legalization? And there's people going back and forth on that. At this point, honestly, this is a personal belief that I do not think the best thing for the industry is federal mandate on high. I actually think the best thing for the industry is going to be that we have time to continue to grow and figure it out amongst us as incumbents before the big players come in. And, you know, if they come in early and it legalizes tomorrow, then a lot of little players are going to sort of, you know, get swiped by the wayside. So there's a little bit of competing interest. What's best for the industry? What's best for the consumers? You know, what's best for each person in each individual state and companies, depending on where their revenue streams are, how far along they are. But I am actually perfectly fine. I think decriminalization is really important so we don't build the industry on the backs of people who are disenfranchised and actually been really tragically hurt by this. But I think the industry having a little bit more time to grow and mature would mean that companies that exist today can still exist in the future. Now, if legalization happens tomorrow, we're all going to make quite a bit of money. Everybody's going to have more access to cannabis. It'll be a good thing. But I think having a little bit more time would benefit those of us who are still in the grind trying to figure out the industry, especially the little guys today.
Thank you for that. And Ashley, I'm going to ask you a question in a minute because Cody, you brought up if it deschedules, legalizes, that the big guys maybe come in. And two things. One, I'd like Ashley's comment on what she's shared before about kind of the loyalty of the cannabis related businesses, that the perception that they feel that have not been treated well in years past or even now by the financial services industry. So if a community bank, a smaller fintech figures this out and goes in and signs with some of these cannabis players, that they're loyal, that it's you brought me to the dance, I'm going to stay with you. So I'm going to ask you that in a minute. And then in looking at, let me ask that first, and I've got another point. So Ashley, can you speak a little bit to the loyalty piece you've mentioned before?
I can. Once we start establishing the connection, connecting those dots, that loyalty can happen, but it's going to take time regardless of if the banks are ready to say, okay, I'm ready to partner up with these trusted MSOs. It's still, it would be chaos still just to bring them together. That's my opinion. I don't think the industry is ready for that yet, but we need to start making it happen. I think that answered your question, but maybe not.
So there's a very technical term in banking called sticky. You want sticky commercial clients. You want them that join and stay your client for years, for decades, right? So if I remember right, what you've shared before is as these cannabis businesses find a bank, a payment platform that they trust, that treats them well, that if there's challenges, you talk about it, you don't just boot them off your platform, that commercial business would become sticky to the bank or the fintech. They're loyal. They're not going to just bail because some big guy came in. Did I hear that right?
Correct. Yeah. And then we have a template we can build upon and duplicate that with other banks. But until we see that, it's not happening.
Well, and one of the other things too, we've heard investors, Cody, not you, but others, that have said, look, I'm not going to invest in a small guy because they're just going to be out of it when the big guys come in. And Chris, I'm going to ask you this in a minute. This is always going to be what a banker would deem a high risk market, just like alcohol is a high risk market. Yes, you can use your card and get commercial banking at a liquor store, but as a bank, it's still a high risk market, gaming, that kind of thing. So there's a specialization of banking and payments in higher risk markets. So just because things deschedule and it becomes federally legal, that doesn't mean that the 800-pound gorillas are going to jump in. I think there's still, Cody, to your point, I think there's still time, some runway. And this is where the regional community banks, the credit unions, the earlier stage fintech, I think there's real hope for all of us that we get this foothold, we build these relationships, we build these clients in the cannabis industry for decades, for life. And don't be so concerned that the gigantic top 10 bank is going to come in and take your business, because I just not hearing that and haven't experienced it, Ashley, with your clients and all. Chris, what's your opinion? You've been in banking and payments and fintech on if it legalizes, do you think that the gigantic household name kind of banks and financial services companies enter?
Yeah, so I think to build on what Ashley and Cody have said, first off, I don't think we have legalization on a federal level and a complete, removal of the descheduling in the near term. Biden has clearly said that that decriminalization is a big importance. He has also said that states' rights are very important. And so I think we're going to see, at least for the next 2 years, because of the split, White House and Senate, we're going to see actually a pretty tough kind of regulatory environment on financial services and descheduling and legalization. But I believe that Cody is right in the idea that having the industry mature further will actually be beneficial to that industry. And whether that's to the dispensaries, the cultivators, or to fintech companies like ourselves, I think it's going to benefit the industry as a whole and make it stronger for when legalization does take place. But to your point, the idea of the industry, even after legalization, just being a free-for-all, like it's selling shirts at a retail location, it's just not realistic. Whether we want it to be seen that way or not, it's a high-risk industry. Perception, belief, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's going to be seen as a high-risk industry for a long time, I believe. And so, we just really need to, I think, focus on that. And Cody's building into her investment analysis. The banks and the banking associations are building it into how they're going to think about things. And we are doing the same. And so I think if we just think about it that way, whether it's just ignore legalization at this point, and it's going to happen at some point, we'll all be probably very happy about it when it does. But until that time, we need to dig in, do a really good job providing solid financial services to the early stage startups, to the big behemoths, because they all need it. And all of us here are there to support the industry. So I'll stop there. I know we're trying to move to Q&A.
Excellent. So just pulling it out of what folks have said, if you're listening and you're a cannabis related business and your eyes are crossing on all this talk of payments and electronic payments and that the Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover aren't available, there are closed loop solutions. When you're out in the industry and ask that, do you have a closed loop electronic payment solution? And that means it's not going to go out to the networks, the branded networks. So a little banking language. And then if you're a financial institution, you're already in or you're looking at it, maybe you're only doing a little bit of business and you want to scale. Don't think you have to staff up with armies of compliance people that know this stuff. There are some really good, affordable solutions out there for the financial institutions. Take a look at the report that's releasing today. It'll give you some examples. You don't have to do it yourself. And there are companies out there that are at their core they came out of cannabis compliance and they're learning banking, or they've partnered with banks to form the company. So there's a lot of hope in all of this. Jake, I think you're going to do the Q&A, but I've got like 5 things just to highlight what our rock stars here said. Cody, you gave us the investor's view across, if I got it right, 66 companies and 200 million in investments. That we ask, how does banking affect your inclination to invest in a company? And you said, unless it's banked, you're not going to do it. So that was huge. You also talked about loyalty, gamification, and with the purchasing piece, and about blockchain as an infrastructure backend, all super important stuff. Ashley, we asked you what was needed by the cannabis-related businesses from a financial services side to be able to have cards for payments or electronic payments app, whatever, not necessarily a card. And you want the banks to welcome the cash and to learn how to work with the cash. You talked about why cannabis businesses might distrust financial industry because they've had payments platforms that somebody told them, this is great, you're going to have it forever, and it gets shut down over 45 to 60 days. So again, go back and listen to this because it had some of the points on how to prevent that. Chris, we asked, how do payments affect profitability in cannabis? And you said taking cash in any business generally costs 7 to 9%. And so having proper, consistent, sustainable electronic payments can increase profitability of the cannabis business 5 to 7%. Cody, we ask you how investors look at businesses and how they prevent or address fraud or compliance challenges. You suggested that you would look at their playbook. You want to know how they think. You want to know their ethics and their morals. Huge. And then Chris, we asked about in the retail industry, if somebody's paying with an electronic payment, credit card, what have you, at any kind of retailer, does that have a lift, a sales lift versus cash or check? And you shared that there's lots of studies out there that say 16 to 18% lift in sales. So I think we can all agree that we need to solve for this, that there's some incredible progress being made, but we need to keep this conversation going across cannabis and financial services. Jake, I'll hand it over to you, and thanks again to Arcview and to the panelists. This is fabulous.
Thanks again to you, Kirsten. Our first question comes today from Leonard Lyons. His question, and feel free to answer this if you'd like to unmute anybody on the panel. How do you enable banks to feel comfortable about banking cannabis if most state cannabis laws do not stop looping from occurring?
Chris, do you want to take that?
I guess I might not fully understand the question. I apologize, but how do you bank in a state and to stop looping? Am I misunderstanding that term?
How do you enable banks to feel comfortable banking if most state cannabis laws do not stop looping from occurring? Maybe, Leonard, if you want to elaborate in the chat window, that would be great. I think nobody.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not familiar with the term looping.
It wasn't easy.
But I mean, my very short premise on this is that there are banks in every single state that has some version of legalization that will bank a cannabis-related business. If you haven't found them, you have not looked hard enough. Whether it's me as an entrepreneur, I need to bank our business, whether it's a dispensary, a cultivator, or a lighting company that's selling to those businesses, there are banks that will bank your business. There aren't a ton of them, but there are banks that will bank your business. And so whether it's a bank or I like more broadly to say financial institution, because that will include credit unions as well, you need to find those organizations. And if you join state cannabis organizations or federal ones that are even here on this panel today, they can even help you find those banks as well. So I apologize, I don't know the loop question, but there are banks in every state where legalization occurs, I can promise.
Excellent. And another one here that's going to require everybody to bust out their crystal balls. But do you see any industry trends indicating a reduction in cash ATM use in retail locations that bring on cashless payment options? And this question comes from Todd Stewart, who's actually interested in buying ATM route portfolios and wonders if cannabis ATMs will maintain their monthly transaction costs for the next 3 to 5 years. Talking about cash ATMs, yeah.
So,
I guess I'll comment here. My hope is that ATMs slowly disappear or disappear at an accelerating rate. I'm pretty biased on that, given the fact that I'm there trying to supply a solution that competes with cash. So I definitely want to see the ATMs go away. I think I'll ask this question, or I'll kind of reverse it and put a question into the market. When you walk into a restaurant or when you walk into your favorite retail store, do you see an ATM there available for you to take out cash to go buy a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, or a burger? Not typically. And so my suspicion would be, as financial services become more available, as descheduling or legalization takes place, and as adoption of more digital solutions occur, you will see a reduction in the need for cash, and therefore the reduction for the need in ATMs, and hopefully the need for cannabis companies to use the ATM fees as a revenue generator to prop up their business. So that's my perspective on it.
Chris, I'm going to add just a point to that. We talked about high-risk businesses and those who are the categories like casinos, liquor stores. Those still, certainly when you go into your clothing store or your grocery store or your restaurant, I don't think I've seen an ATM there. But in those others, higher risk, you do tend to, especially with casinos. So I think from talking to the consumers, they're saying, look, we just want this to be like the rest of our life. I want to be able to pay the way I want to pay. And if it's a higher risk business, maybe there are some ATMs that stay, but it's like you're saying, the convenience, the safety and security, the cost goes down if we can have a proper, efficient electronic payment. Jake?
The only thing I would add really quickly is just do a modeling of your business. If you want to invest in this kind of business, assume that you probably only have 2 to 3 years in order to take in all of the returns that you want to get and whatever your IRR or cash on cash return is. So model it out on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year basis, and only invest if you can get the returns that you want based on the timeline. You're talking about a Band-Aid solution. So at some point, ATMs are not going to be the peak mechanism for buying, because they aren't in any other industry, like Chris and Kirsten are saying. So I would just model it out. And if it's just you investing personally and you have a 3-year time horizon, that might work. If it's you making a big play on the industry and having a VC style business with a ton of cash up front, I'd probably pass.
Excellent. Great answers. And we do have time for one quick one here before we have to break into the closer, but this has been such an amazing panel. All right. And by the way, we got an answer on looping. It is multiple purchases on the same day. So with regards to our next question here, let's go to James Shoris. Are you seeing any movement in the industry to allow the financial aspect of a consumer purchase to be consummated entirely online versus purchase reservation online with payment consummated at point of sale? Concerns about the risk attendant to the interstate commerce for cannabis transactions is their question.
I can say that, especially with some of the newer edgy solutions, and some of them are listed in the ITA report, there is total online within a legal state, and using legal payment, often closed loop payment, because it's legal within that state, that it is all online, can be all online.
I can comment about Spence specifically. We have the infrastructure to facilitate a payment completely digitally as part of the transaction. The issue is that in states where the definition of transaction or sale requires a person to be under video surveillance or in a retail location, that prohibits a completely e-commerce based sale. That's just not allowed legally. But I can say this: we have the full ability in a system to transact digitally, move funds digitally, and then if it is allowed in the state to actually initiate the transaction digitally, that can occur. Otherwise, there are some other ways to solve it from a scheduling of that transaction. I am not aware, I know Kirsten just mentioned, but most states, if not all, require a physical presence between the consumer and the exchange of product to occur. It's not like you can drop this stuff in the mail and pick it up and get it delivered to your home like Amazon.
Anybody else? All right. Well, we had over 200 of you tuning in live, so of course we can't get to everybody's question today, but please do let us know, and please connect with any of our speakers or sponsors today. We'll make sure their information is once again into the chat window. But a final round of applause for Kirsten. Amazing job moderating. Cody killed it as always. Chris, fantastic to have you on for the first time. I'm sure it won't be our last. And Ashley, oh my God, it's so great to see you, and great job today. That was a heck of a panel, to say the least. All right. Well, time to actually move into our closer today. So panelists, feel free to turn off your video. We're just going to make the network aware of what we else have going on in the weeks to come. So we actually do have some special... my video has stopped. We do have some special offers coming up today. While we do share those, you'll notice that a webinar survey has popped up. Please share your thoughts on today's webinar and the topics important for you going forward. We want to make sure all these panels are aligned with what you need to know about here in cannabis. Now, visit arcviewaccess.com, I'm sure you already know, for all the latest activities around what's going down here at Arcview. There are a couple new initiatives we're ecstatic to tell you about. One of them is very near and dear to my heart, an Arcview Consulting. Arcview has a consultancy. It's actually been running behind the scenes for several months now, but we're making things official. The email is engagements@arcviewconsulting.com if you're interested in these services. Would love to connect with you, learn a little bit more about any of your problems that we can help solve. Now, the Women Investor Network, WIN, and Miss Grass actually has a holiday guide circulating. There are, of course, a lot of different products on there. So if you're doing some last minute shopping, don't want to wait for the insanity of Black Friday, it's time to get in and buy your favorite CBD products. There's a lot of stuff on there for your friends and family. Now, services for cannabis companies, and I'm talking about pitch feedback, I'm talking about feedback from investors, that's available at arcviewignites.com if you're not aware. Head over there and you can connect with Lewis Hahn, who runs our deal flow team. And now we have a couple more digital webinars coming up. Save your seat, now's the time. On November 16th, we're doing a Tales from the Top with Nancy Whiteman. That one's going to be fully public. That is our Women Investor Network webinar. We also have, of course, on the 17th, an Arcview Collective Fund members meeting. So just members of our fund, just the LPs of the MMF, and of course, Arcview members, you're able to access this one and hear some great companies showcasing. On the 18th, I am going to join you once again in another Jake Sponsor Corner segment for Arcview Access, the global evolution of marijuana, medical marijuana. This one's insane. I mean, we have Larry Lisser of Hello MD, Alvarut sponsoring again. We're going to have the investor perspective, the operator perspective. We're going to have the perspective of basically the CVS of Canada, a large convenience store, speaking to, of course, how cannabis products are starting to hit the market. And of course, we're doing another virtual tour. This one's going to be with Grav Labs on December 1st. So get your tickets now. And this is actually the first time we're actually going to be able to talk about this, but we're doing a town hall, something we've never done before, to talk about what's happened in 2020 and, of course, the outlook for 2021. One of the main subjects we'll be discussing right off the bat is going to be, of course, these new states coming online. So expect New Jersey to be heavily focused on, and our very own Gene Sullivan will be leading the conversation. Now, in closing, I just wanted to thank you all once again for joining today. And as we always say, be well, be free. Thank you.